Before Steve Martin became a comedy legend and Cheryl Ladd flew into fame as an angel, they shared the screen on a bizarre variety show that vanished after just 5 weeks. The Ken Berry Wow Show was a summer replacement series that launched superstars, featured Abbott and Costello connections, and made such a desperate plea for survival that it became television folklore. Fact 1. The episode count mystery. Here's something strange about the Ken Berry Wow Show that still confuses television historians today. Nobody can agree on how many episodes actually aired. If you look up the show on Wikipedia, you'll find it listed as having run for 5 episodes during the summer of 1972. But if you dig into contemporary reviews and viewer accounts from people who actually watched the show when it first aired, they consistently mention that it ran for 6 weeks. This discrepancy has persisted for over 50 years, and neither side seems willing to budge. The confusion likely stems from how the show was structured and scheduled. The series had a pilot or special episode that aired on March 21, 1972, featuring guest stars like Carol Burnett, Sonny Bono, Phyllis Diller, and Bob Hope. Then the show returned as a regular summer replacement series starting July 15, 1972, airing on Saturday nights. If you count the March special as episode 0 and then add 5 regular summer episodes, you get 6 total broadcasts, which would explain why some viewers remember 6 weeks of programming. However, official sources like IMDb list only 5 episodes in the regular series run, not counting the special. The truth is that in the era before home video recording and detailed broadcast archives, keeping accurate records of short-lived summer replacement shows wasn't a priority for networks, so the exact number of episodes may forever remain one of television's minor unsolved mysteries. Fact 2. 3 future megastars in one cast. The Ken Berry Wow Show holds a remarkable distinction in television history. It featured 3 performers who would go on to become major stars of the 1970s and 80s, all working together as regular cast members on the same short-lived variety show. Steve Martin, who would become one of comedy's most influential figures, was a cast regular performing sketches and comedy bits. Teri Garr, who would earn an Academy Award nomination for her role in Tootsie and become a beloved comedic actress, was also part of the ensemble. And then there was a young woman billed under her birth name, Cheryl Stoppelmoor, who would later change her name to Cheryl Ladd and achieve superstardom as one of Charlie's Angels. What makes this convergence even more extraordinary is that the show only lasted 5 to 6 weeks during the summer of 1972. For such a brief program to inadvertently serve as a launching pad for 3 performers who would go on to define entertainment for the next 2 decades is almost unprecedented. Steve Martin would become a comedy legend with his stand-up career and films like The Jerk. Teri Garr would star in classics like Young Frankenstein and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Cheryl Ladd would become a television icon and pop culture phenomenon. None of them were famous yet in 1972, just talented young performers getting experience on a summer variety show that most people would quickly forget. Fact 3. Cheryl Ladd used her birth name. When Cheryl Ladd appeared on the Ken Berry Wow Show in 1972, viewers who tuned in had no idea they were watching a future television superstar. That's partly because she wasn't using the name that would make her famous. The credits listed her as Cheryl Stoppelmoor, her birth name from her hometown of Huron, South Dakota. Born Cheryl Jean Stoppelmoor on July 12, 1951, she had come to Hollywood in 1970, hoping to launch a music career. She initially used the stage name Sherry Moore when she provided the singing voice for Melody Valentine on the animated series Josie and the Pussycats. But for the Ken Berry Wow Show, she went back to performing under her real surname. Stoppelmoor is an unusual German name that proved difficult for many people to pronounce and remember, which became a practical problem for a young performer trying to build recognition in Hollywood. She would eventually take the surname Ladd when she married actor David Ladd, son of famous 1940s and 50s actor Alan Ladd, in 1973. She kept the name even after their divorce in 1980 because by that point, Cheryl Ladd had become a household name thanks to her role on Charlie's Angels. But back in 1972, she was just 21-year-old Cheryl Stoppelmoor, performing comedy sketches and dance numbers on a short-lived variety show, with no idea that within 5 years she would be one of the most recognized faces on television. Fact 4. The same producers behind Sonny and Cher. The Ken Berry Wow Show didn't just happen to resemble the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour by coincidence. The two shows shared the exact same producing team, Chris Beard and Alan Bly, who were among the most successful variety show producers working in television during the early 1970s. Beard and Bly had helped turn Sonny and Cher into one of the most popular variety shows on television, and ABC was hoping they could work the same magic with Ken Berry. The promotional materials for the show made this connection explicit, proudly announcing that the program came from the producers of the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. This wasn't just marketing hype. It was a strategic attempt to capitalize on the credibility and success that Beard and Bly had built with audiences. The producers brought the same approach to the Ken Berry Show, using a similar format of comedy sketches interspersed with musical numbers, a regular ensemble cast, and big-name celebrity guests. They even borrowed some of the same writers and behind-the-scenes talent. However, despite the pedigree of its production team and the proven formula, the Ken Berry Wow Show couldn't replicate the success of Sonny and Cher. The show aired during the summer as a replacement series, which meant it faced an uphill battle for viewership from the start. Summer audiences were smaller and less likely to commit to new shows, and by the end of the summer of 1972, the show disappeared from ABC's schedule, never to return. Fact 5. Ken's real son appeared on screen. Family Connections added a personal touch to the Ken Berry Wow Show when Ken's 8-year-old adopted son made an appearance on the program. John K. Berry, who was born in May of 1964, appeared in at least one episode playing the role of Boy on Scooter, though his part was so minor that many sources don't even credit him. Ken Berry and his wife, Jackie Joseph, who was also an actress and performer, had adopted John in 1964 after the tragic death of their biological son, Joseph Larson Berry, who had lived only 6 days in December of 1962. By the time the Ken Berry Wow Show aired in the summer of 1972, John was old enough to make a brief appearance on his father's variety show. The family connection extended beyond John's cameo. In the pilot episode that aired in March of 1972, Ken introduced what the episode description calls his 2 kids in a segment called Green Green Grass of Home, suggesting that both of his adopted children, John and his daughter Jennifer, who was born in 1965, may have appeared in that special. John K. Berry would eventually pursue his own creative career, becoming a co-founder of the indie rock band Idaho, before his death from brain cancer in January of 2016 at the age of 51. His brief appearance on his father's variety show represents a small but touching moment of family collaboration in a series that has otherwise been largely forgotten by television history. Fact 6. Carol Burnett was Berry's career fairy godmother. Ken Berry's entire television career might never have happened without Carol Burnett's intervention and continued support. The story began in the late 1950s when Burnett was performing in New York on The Gary Moore Show. During a trip to Los Angeles, she went to see the Billy Barnes Revue, a popular stage production, and was immediately impressed by a young dancer and comedian named Ken Berry. Burnett was so taken with his talent that she convinced the producers of The Gary Moore Show to bring Berry to New York as a guest star, giving him his first major national television exposure. This single act of support launched Berry's television career, but Burnett didn't stop there. When she got her own variety show on CBS, The Carol Burnett Show, which premiered in 1967, Berry became one of her most frequent guest stars, appearing alongside other regulars like Jim Nabors and Steve Lawrence. Their professional relationship continued throughout the 1970s, with Berry appearing on numerous Carol Burnett Show episodes. In 1972, the same year his own variety show aired and failed, Berry appeared with Burnett in a color remake of her Broadway hit Once Upon a Mattress for CBS. Their collaboration extended well into Berry's later career, including his appearance in the 1982 television movie Eunice, based on the Carol Burnett Show sketch called The Family, which would eventually spin off into Mama's Family, where Barry became a series regular. Without Burnett's early recognition of his talent and her willingness to give him opportunities throughout his career, Ken Barry might have remained just another talented dancer who never got his big break. Fact 7. A desperate on-air plea to save the show. One of the most memorable and bittersweet moments from the Ken Barry Wow Show came when Ken Barry himself acknowledged the show's impending cancellation in a way that was both humorous and heartbreaking. According to viewer accounts, Barry made a joking plea directly to the television audience, asking them to send money to ABC to help save the show from cancellation. This wasn't a serious fundraising campaign, of course, but rather a satirical acknowledgement that the show's days were numbered. Barry's self-aware humor about the situation shows both his comedic sensibility and his understanding of the television business. Summer replacement shows in 1972 were essentially auditions for the fall television season. Networks would test new programs during the summer months when regular series were on hiatus, and if a show performed well enough, it might get picked up for the regular season. Barry clearly knew that the Ken Barry Wow Show wasn't going to make the cut. Rather than pretend everything was fine or simply let the show fade away without comment, he chose to address the elephant in the room with humor. The moment has stuck in the memories of viewers who watched the show as children and teenagers during that summer of 1972. One reviewer specifically mentioned this plea when recalling the show decades later, noting that despite Barry's charming appeal to save the program, it passed into warm memory at the end of the summer of 1972, never to return to television. Fact 8. The Benny Hill-like shtick controversy. The Ken Barry Wow Show drew criticism from at least one reviewer for its handling of female cast members, particularly its tendency to feature them in revealing costumes. According to reviews preserved on IMDb, the show often resorted to Benny Hill-like shtick by parading the more attractive female members in skimpy bikinis. This approach specifically mentioned cast members including Cheryl Ladd, who would later become famous as a Charlie's Angel, along with Laura Lacey and Barbara Joyce, who was described in one review as spectacularly endowed. This style of comedy was common in variety shows of the early 1970s, particularly in programs like The Benny Hill Show, which regularly featured attractive women in minimal clothing as part of its comedy routines. However, what worked for Benny Hill's British comedy show apparently felt out of place on an American family variety show airing during prime time on a major network. The reviewer who mentioned this aspect of the show seemed to view it as a desperate attempt to gain viewers, suggesting that the Ken Barry Wow Show lacked the strong writing and clever sketches that made other variety shows successful. While these kinds of displays were not uncommon in the era, especially in Las Vegas-style variety entertainment, they represented a lower common denominator of comedy that stood in contrast to the more sophisticated sketch work being done on shows like The Carol Burnett Show, which the Ken Barry Wow Show was trying to emulate. The reliance on this type of visual comedy may have contributed to the show's failure to connect with audiences and critics. Fact 9. More risque than Carol Burnett's show. Despite being produced in the same era and featuring similar variety show formats, the Ken Barry Wow Show took a notably different approach to its comedy content compared to the Carol Burnett Show. While both shows featured sketch comedy, musical numbers, and guest stars, contemporary reviewers specifically noted that the sketches on the Ken Barry program were more risque than the versions Carol Burnett's writers created. This distinction is significant because the Carol Burnett Show was known for pushing boundaries while still maintaining a family-friendly appeal. The fact that reviewers felt the need to point out that Barry's show went even further suggests that the producers were trying to attract viewers by being edgier and more adult-oriented than the typical variety show of 1972. However, this strategy may have backfired. The Ken Barry Wow Show was scheduled as a summer replacement series, airing when families were more likely to be watching television together during vacation time. The more risque content might have made parents uncomfortable watching with their children, limiting the potential audience. At the same time, the show wasn't risque enough to appeal to adults seeking more sophisticated entertainment. It ended up caught in an awkward middle ground, trying to be both a family-friendly variety show and a more adult-oriented comedy program, and succeeding at neither. This tonal confusion, combined with what reviewers described as sketches that tended to be a bit corny despite their risque elements, contributed to the show's inability to find an audience during its brief summer run. Fact 10. The Abbott and Costello Connection. Ken Berry's Path to Television stardom included an important detour through Las Vegas that connected him to two of comedy's most legendary names. In 1956, after being released from his contract with Universal Studios, Berry ventured to Las Vegas, where he joined the stage act of Abbott and Costello at the Sahara Hotel and Casino. He didn't just open for the famous comedy duo, he actually became part of their act, performing sketches and song and dance routines alongside Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. This was Berry's first performance on the Las Vegas Strip, and it provided him with invaluable experience, working with established stars in front of live audiences night after night. The connection proved crucial for Berry's development as a performer, as it taught him how to work within established comedy routines while showcasing his own dancing and physical comedy talents. During this time, working with Abbott and Costello, Berry also met an actress named Dee Arlen, whom he later credited with helping him get his first big break in the entertainment industry. The Las Vegas experience represented a turning point in Berry's career, bridging his early struggles trying to make it as a musical performer and his eventual success on television. By the time The Ken Berry Wow Show aired in 1972, Berry had come full circle, hosting his own variety show where he could showcase the same combination of dancing, singing, and physical comedy that he had honed while working with Abbott and Costello 16 years earlier on the stages of Las Vegas. Fact 11. A star-studded guest list. Nobody remembers. For a show that only lasted 5 to 6 weeks during the summer of 1972, The Ken Berry Wow Show managed to attract an impressive roster of Hollywood talent as guest stars. The list reads like a who's who of entertainment from that era. Bob Hope, George Burns, Don Knotts, Andy Griffith, Phyllis Diller, Sonny Bono, Cass Elliot, Dick Clark, Patty Duke, John Astin, Chad Everett, Lyle Waggoner, Forrest Tucker, Robert Goulet, Joyce Brothers, and Monty Hall all made appearances. Carol Burnett, who had been instrumental in launching Berry's television career, appeared twice on the show as a guest star. The pilot episode that aired in March of 1972 was particularly loaded with star power, featuring Burnett, Bono, Diller, Hope, Andy Griffith, Peter Lawford, and Jim Nabors. This level of celebrity participation suggests that ABC and the producers had high hopes for the show and were willing to call in favors to give it the best possible chance of success. Many of these guests were friends or former colleagues of Ken Berry from his years working as a frequent guest star on other variety shows. Despite this star-studded support, the show couldn't overcome the challenges of being a summer replacement series with inconsistent writing and unclear tone. The fact that so many major stars were willing to appear on the show demonstrates the respect Berry had earned in the industry, but it also makes the show's failure even more notable. It wasn't lack of star power that doomed the Ken Berry Wow Show. Something more fundamental was missing. Fact 12. The best chase of the week running gag. One of the most memorable recurring bits from the Ken Berry Wow Show featured Steve Martin in a sketch that showcased his emerging comedic sensibility and willingness to subvert traditional variety show formats. According to viewer accounts preserved on television nostalgia websites, the routine involved Ken Berry attempting to present an award to Steve Martin, who was playing a character named Mr. Steve Watson, for the best chase of the week. True to his anti-establishment comedy style, Martin's character would have nothing to do with the award ceremony and would run off stage with Berry chasing after him. This would then lead into a filmed slapstick chase sequence, taking the action beyond the studio and into pre-recorded footage. The sketch is significant because it demonstrates the kind of absurdist, self-referential comedy that Steve Martin was developing during this period of his career, before he became famous for his stand-up work and films. Rather than playing along with the traditional variety show format, where performers graciously accept awards and praise, Martin's character actively rejected the entire premise, turning what should have been a simple presentation into chaotic physical comedy. The fact that this became a recurring bit suggests it was one of the show's more successful elements, combining Ken Berry's skills in physical comedy and dance with Steve Martin's emerging comedic voice. For viewers who remember the show, this chase sequence stands out as one of the few genuinely memorable moments from a series that otherwise failed to make a lasting impression on television history. Fact 13. Jay Stewart was the announcer. The voice that introduced the Ken Berry Wow Show in its promotional materials and possibly on the show itself belonged to a man who would become one of the most recognizable voices in game show history. Jay Stewart served as the announcer for the show, lending his distinctive voice to help promote the summer series. At the time of the Ken Berry Wow Show in 1972, Stewart was already well known as the longtime announcer for Let's Make a Deal, the game show hosted by Monty Hall that had premiered in 1963 and become a daytime television institution. Stewart had been with Let's Make a Deal from the beginning and would continue with the show through most of its run. His booming, enthusiastic announcing style was perfect for the excitement and energy of a game show, and that same energy presumably carried over to his work announcing the Ken Berry Wow Show. Stewart would go on to even greater fame in the 1980s when he became the announcer for Sale of the Century, hosted by Canadian-born Jim Perry, where his catchphrase, "And now, here's your host, Jim Perry," became familiar to millions of viewers. The connection between the Ken Berry Wow Show and Let's Make a Deal runs deeper than just sharing an announcer, as Monty Hall himself appeared as a guest star on one of the episodes of Berry's variety show. Stewart's involvement represents another way that the producers tried to connect the show to proven television success, using a familiar voice that audiences already associated with entertainment and excitement. Fact 14. It premiered as a special in March, then returned in July. The broadcast history of the Ken Berry Wow Show is more complicated than the simple story of a failed summer replacement series would suggest. The show actually had two distinct premiere dates in 1972, which has contributed to confusion about its run. The first episode, designated as Episode 1.0 in IMDb's numbering system, aired on Tuesday, March 21, 1972, as what appears to have been a special or pilot presentation. This March episode was a star-studded affair featuring Carol Burnett, Sonny Bono, Phyllis Diller, Bob Hope, Andy Griffith, Peter Lawford, Jim Nabors, and Forrest Tucker as guests. In the episode, Ken Berry played a ski lodge owner who puts on a variety show using talented locals, and he introduced his two children in a segment called Green, Green Grass of Home. Then, nearly 4 months later, the show returned to ABC's schedule on Saturday, July 15, 1972, as a regular summer replacement series. This July premiere featured different guests, including John Astin, Dick Clark, Patty Duke, Cass Elliot, and Monty Hall, along with regular cast members, including Steve Martin, Cheryl Ladd, and the New Seekers musical group. The show then ran through the summer on Saturday nights before being canceled. This two-stage rollout was not uncommon for variety shows of the era, where networks would test a special or pilot during the regular season, then bring the show back during the summer if they wanted to give it a trial run with lower expectations and less competition. Fact 15. One viewer thought they repeated the same episode 6 times. One of the strangest viewer accounts of the Ken Berry Wow Show comes from someone who watched the series as it aired during the summer of 1972 and came away with an unusual theory about what they had witnessed. In a review posted on IMDb years later, this viewer wrote that they remembered being crazy about this show for 1 week and 1 hour, meaning they absolutely loved the first episode when it premiered. However, after the series ended, they developed a theory about what had actually happened. The viewer speculated that the network executives had faced a choice. They could either produce 6 mediocre episodes, or they could take their one terrific first episode and show it 6 times with just a little bit of new material added each week. According to this theory, the producers chose The latter option essentially recycling the same episode throughout the summer with minor variations. The viewer later admits that looking back at clips on YouTube made them doubt their judgment about how great that first episode actually was. But the fact that they could entertain this theory speaks to either how similar the episodes were in structure and content, or how little impression the later episodes made compared to the premiere. Whether this theory has any basis in reality, or was simply the confused memory of someone watching as a child in 1972 remains unclear, but it represents one of the more unusual pieces of folklore surrounding this largely forgotten variety show.